So Michael and Harvey, the floor is yours, and we look forward to your demo.
Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you all. We've been involved with you guys for a long time. I'd like to introduce you to Michael Velasquez. Michael is our Director of Technology. He's also our training specialist. He's going to lead you through a training session as if we were training a new Computrition user to use our system. And Mary George has kindly set up the sandbox so that we can do this. And we'll go through it, and Michael will lead you through everything. And then, of course, if you have any questions during the process, I think it's okay to ask, and I'll let Michael handle that. And then if you have any questions afterwards, we'll be able to do that as well. So go ahead, Michael. Go ahead, Mary.
Well, the first thing that happens when we integrate with a client is they've got to get the Computrition gateway installed, and they have to give us access to it. What we do is we have a handful of Amazon servers that will make direct queries to the gateway and pull the data from there. We have no interaction with the actual Computrition suite that the users will enter the information in. We only do queries to the gateway. I'm not sure if you guys know this, it's your hardware and software, but that's what has to happen first for any client. And that's where I'd say most of the time gets eaten up working with their IT and network security to get us access to that. Once we have access, the process is pretty streamlined because we just show them how to enter the data into Computrition Hospitality Suite correctly, and we make the queries and we display the data.
Let me jump in for a second, Michael. The process of designing and engineering the layout of the menu boards takes us about 4 or 5 weeks. And during that time, we're working with the client to engineer the boards. And once we've completed that process and we start to begin to programming the boards, that's when we have to have access to the gateway. So there's plenty of time to get the gateway set up, but once we do all the programming, then we have access, and we have access to the gateway, then we can start seeing data. And now give it back to you, Michael.
So we're going to be jumping into this demo as if the gateway's already been set up and the client already, they're familiar with their menus by this point. So if you were going to give support to someone, I think it's most likely going to be during the process of getting gateway set up and getting us access. Once they have it, we give them a login to our content management system, our CMS, which is here at epicure-menus.com, and that's what you see the login for now. So Mary, go ahead and log in. Let's go to the user list. I think you're only going to see one thing in there. This is our content management system. It has a few sections. There's My Displays, My Menu Content, and usually if a client has multiple users and multiple locations, for example, if one person were in charge of one or more VA locations, they would have a list of those things. They get an overview, and then they can dive in to a specific location and then to a specific menu. Let's go to My Menu Content. My Menu Content is where they see all their possible menus, day parts. We're going to be using a Computrition client as an example, Carl Foundation. You can see here, we've only put 2 menus here, but they might have a Carl Foundation salad menu, a coffee menu. They might have a breakfast meal for each of those, a lunch meal. These are just some other examples of other clients. Unpause right there. Scroll down just a little bit.
Yeah.
Right there. For example, this client that has a lunch, entrees, innovations that only plays on Friday. They have one that plays Monday through Thursday, and then something else that plays again on Friday. The My Menu Content page is very granular. Again, it is every single menu, station, and day part. Go ahead and scroll back up. And the way they do this is click on the pencil icon that's next to the south menu, please, and hit the preview button. what just happened is for the date that was in that little preview window, it made a query to the gateway for this specific menu at this specific time. This is reading from a Computrition Hospitality Suite. And Mary, if you could bring that up and show them where this data exists in the Hospitality Suite.
So the particular menu we're using is the cafeteria breakfast menu here. Do you want me to bring up the rules, Michael?
On the right is an example of the instructions that this particular client received. It's hard to know what to explain to you guys since this is your software. But what we do is I just give them a little map of the Computrition field names from the Hospitality Suite and what we see in the XML query. That's not terribly important for them except to know that we only pay attention to these Computrition field names, the menu group, the menu item name, the menu item text, the actual selling price, the nutrients, and the pricing description. And what we've done is we have taken over a couple of the fields, the enticing description and the menu item text, to allow us to format your data in a way that displays nicely. And we're going to show you how that works. So if you look at sorry, Mary, can you read those instructions again?
Yep.
If you look at this menu on where it says egg bites, wraps, and then sandwiches and breakfast favorites, this is a menu that's divided into a left-right half. And if you bring up the actual preview again, please. You'll see that currently everything is scrolling over to the left, but already the data is coming in pretty nicely. You've got the price correct area. You've got an item called coffee and then a little description below it. You have the calories, fat, carbs, and sodium. You can see that for orange juice, you have some icons that represent things like it's gluten-friendly, it's heart-healthy, and it's vegan or vegetarian. And let's show you where we pull all that data from. Let's go back to look at orange juice in the Hospitality Suite, please.
Oops. Let's try this again.
And would you be able to bring up the preview as well as on top of this, in our CMS?
Of course.
Great, thank you. And let's go to the Publishing tab. That's where I think everything's happening. So the first thing up there is menu group. Menu group, we only use it in the sense that if there is no group assigned, we do not display that item. That is the easiest way for a client to keep something in their menu but not display it. I can't think of any other reasons they do that off the top of my head, but maybe there's something that they need to make for production, but they don't want to be on the menu. And they can still keep it in their menu in Computrition, but they don't have to display it. Then you have the menu item name. That's orange juice. That's what we display as the name of the item. And then menu item text, that is the description, like the pretty description of an item. Here it's in Spanish, but it could be, fresh squeezed orange juice from Florida or something like that. If that isn't in there, then it just condenses the next item below it. So apple juice would just all up and there wouldn't be a description.
Okay.
You can refresh the browser page. It should.
There we go.
As you can see, the changes are basically instantaneous once things are saved. So that's the menu item text. That's what we use as the description of an item. The menu ordering group, I don't believe we use, so we're agnostic to whatever's there. But now if we could go to the enticing description field. So you see here under enticing description, in parentheses, there's some icon codes. We provide these for each client based on whatever icons they have. GF would be for gluten-friendly, HH would be for heart-healthy, VN is for vegan, I believe, or vegetarian. And that's how they get the icons next to the item. So if you delete the VN, you'll see that it'll disappear.
Very cool.
And what's happening is this is how a client would build their menus. They could go into each item in their hospitality suite menu, and they start adding these format codes and rearranging everything in order they want. The order they arranged in the hospitality suite is the order to display it. And they start building out the menus. They can preview them in real time as they build them out, just like we're doing now. Now, you'll notice at the very top of this menu, we have a header, juices and fruits. And you have some little headers for the price column, the calorie, fat, carb, sodium. What this is, we just call it a dummy recipe. It's a recipe inside Computrition that has special format codes to make it appear differently on the boards. So if you go to that recipe, please, Mary. You'll see in the enticing description field, which is where we put all the format codes to make it display a certain way. There's an H1 followed by a tilde, then price, tilde cal, tilde fat, tilde carb, tilde sodium. The H1 tells this to display as a header, so it has a red background type. Sometimes there are different header codes like an H2 or maybe even an H3 that would do something a little different. Go ahead and change it to an H2, please. This particular menu board has two possible headers, so it should do a gray background instead of a red one. And that's all determined during the design phase. Harvey is working with the client to design the menus. And then the tildes separate different headers for various columns, such as the price and the nutrients. So that's how we make headers. You can insert them anywhere. They're just dummy recipes that are their only purpose is for on the boards. Can you go back in the hospitality suite and look for, I think it's a bread header.
So if I may just interject a couple things here. I think you have a couple of requirements for the header recipes, and that is that they can't be analyzed and they can't have a price associated with them.
If it does have a price for a recipe, we won't display it.
Okay.
The only requirement from the display is that it have a group assigned to it. So if you scroll down to that breads one, you'll notice that it has an unassigned publishing group. But let's dive into that one and go to the tab with the enticing description. And could you bring up the preview again, please? and scroll down, you notice that this menu is Rice Krispies, but there are actually many more items in this menu, and they're sort of dropping off into the below menu. The menu is designed to have a left half and a right half. To get things to the other side of the menu, we have another special formatting code, and it's just an asterisk. So an asterisk will tell this recipe and everything below it to move over to the next section of a board. If this board had 3 sections or 4 sections, you would just create a header recipe and an asterisk there, and it'll just know to go to the next section. The reason you're not seeing this show up here is because it's got an unassigned publishing group. So as soon as we assign some sort of publishing group, we'll see it pop up.
So I am just going to do one thing really quickly. So when I was doing the building for this demo, I decided that some of these things I didn't want to appear, like prune juice I'm probably not going to sell in the cafeteria. I think this was copied from a patient menu. And so I redid some of this, so I'm just going to copy that menu forward, the one that I fixed up. Make sure I've got the right date.
This is Laura Armstrong. I wasn't sure if I could interact with a question.
Sure, of course.
Okay. So I saw a moment ago we were changing some of the coding so that it would display with a red header or a gray header. Do those sorts of codings affect kind of like anything besides the color of the background bar? Do they also affect some sort of display, like if it's H1, then it's the very first header, but if it's an H2, then it might be slightly indented or maybe some sort of tree format?
We determine what it looks like. Well, H1, H2, H3, it's just a generic header code, but what it does is determined with the client during the design phase. So for this particular menu, all it does is change the color. But certainly we could say that, an H3 is indented and blue, or it's a double height. It's like a big header as opposed to a little one. So all of that is determined in the design phase, but the format codes, they stay the same across all our Computrition clients, and then they just do different things based on the client requests and the design phase. And the thing is, you guys are coming into this fresh, but by the time they have access to our content management system, whoever is laying out the menu is pretty intimately familiar with what it should look like. So they're not coming into it cold. They've been designing it with Harvey for several weeks. And I would have had a discussion with them earlier on to answer questions about the instructions I sent. And there's a lot of confusion before they are able to preview them live, but every training session, as soon as they see the preview and that they can do changes in real time, it just flies after that. So there's a lot of nervousness before that, and then once they can preview it, it's smooth sailing from there. You can bring up the preview again.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, you'll notice that the publishing groups here look a lot different than they did on the menu I copied. I did this at the menu level. Obviously, it depends on how the customer wants to do it, if they're going to have unique recipes for their menu boards or if they're going to use existing recipes. Because I was using existing recipes, I did most of my changes at the menu level, which is why I copied these forward. So with the changes that I made, this is what the menu board looks like now.
So typically we would use a different color header, like you see here, the juice and fruits in the gray, as let's say as a subheader below a category. So maybe the main category header is build your own sandwich. And the subcategory might be proteins, might be cheeses, might be breads, etc. And those subcategories might be in gray, whereas the main header, build your own, might be in red.
Merrick, if you could bring up the instructions, the display rules. I think I have a picture of how the menu would be organized in real life. Scroll down.
Yeah, I think it might be all the way at the bottom. Oh,
there you go.
There you go.
And you can see that there's a few different formatting things happening in this menu. For the salad, because it's, I'm not sure why they do it like this, but there's no prices on the individual bases for the salad at the top, so we don't display the price there. What else can you see? And they do that a few times. They've got subheaders. Scroll down a little more, and I think there's a coffee menu as well.
I think that one actually.
I'm not sure if I have a picture of this.
Nicer.
Oh, here we go. These are the kinds of instructions that I'll send the client. Everything above this was a general instruction that is the same for every Computrition client. And here I'll just do an example of our menu, and I'll say, oh, this is how you make a header. This is how you make a regular item. And they get this beforehand, so there's really not that much confusion.
And of course, the beauty of the system is the fact the content management system is what you see is what you get. So as Michael points out, the feedback is immediate, and one learns right away what they're doing because they see the results.
And all these different menu layouts were made with the same format codes, just using different combinations. And even within a single client, they might have boards that look entirely different from each other, but it all. So, they might use an H1 on one board, and it does a certain thing, and we could use H1 differently on another board, that format code, or we could just make more form codes, H4, H5. What we want to do is we want to integrate as easily as possible with the way a client is already using the hospitality suite. And what that means is, how do I say this? If they're arranging things a certain way, we just don't want to interrupt it. So we will always try and work with them so that they have to do as little that's different as possible while still making the boards look good.
We don't really want to force a client into changing the way they use their hospitality suite. So once we learn that they need a certain thing done a certain way, we'll change our system to make it easy for them. So we may have to hard program something in order to accommodate that, but it'll only be for them because that's their unique way of using your system.
So Mary, if this is pulling from the menu, I'm assuming that if you change the publishing group at the menu level, that is what Epicure will read, right?
That's
not
correct.
For this particular menu. Sorry, Mary, not this particular menu. Right in this menu, we're only using a publishing group as an on-off switch. So we don't care that orange juice is part of fruits and juices. If for some reason it were mislabeled as being part of the breads publishing group, it would still display as orange juice. It would still display in the juices and the fruits header because we're just displaying the menu in the same order that we're getting it in here. So orange juice, apple juice.
So it's all relative to what you put in what codes you put in the enticing description field, and not really coming from the publishing group.
Not necessarily. If you could bring them up side by side again, you'll see that this preview of the menu board, everything's in the exact same order as it is in the hospitality suite. You've got orange juice, apple juice. The pear nectar has an unassigned group, so we're ignoring it, and the next thing is prune juice. And you can see that Mary has put some asterisks or stars around the ones that she's using as a header, so cereals. You can see that, and then followed by cream of wheat and then oatmeal. Right now, for this particular menu, we're just displaying it in the exact order as they appear in Computrition.
Okay.
But we could, one of our first Computrition clients, we organized by the publishing group because that's how they were doing it. So we grabbed everything that was by fruits and juices, and then we automatically create a header with the same name as the publishing group and organize our menus that way, so that because they did not want to have to redo the order how they were doing things.
Right.
And I could see that Mary just took off the prune juice.
Right. So that's
right, Mary?
unassigned.
Yes. I just
Now,
changed
there
the
are
previews
situations
publishing
where
group to unassigned.
There are going to be times where what the client wants their digital board to look like is just not going to be compatible with how they organize their menus. And at that point, we may have to say, look, if you want them to look this way, you are going to have to do some changes, and it just becomes like a negotiation or a conversation. But we don't have, once they get used to using it a certain way, that they get used to it, and there's not really any problems. We prefer that they do things, what you see is you get where they just lay out in the exact order they want, because then there's no confusion. What they'll find is if we do things programmatically or we do things automatically based on a publishing group or something, they'll go, oh, but I want it to do this, and then we'll go, but no, that would be an exception to a rule that we created, and then sometimes they end up saying, okay, well, let's do it your way, or they live with it. But it's very customizable.
Are there any boards here, Michael, at Carl Foundation that have multiple price points?
I think the coffee one does, but that's not how. I don't think it's going to look correct. This data was meant for the style menu. I could bring up another menu. Let's see. Let me find the one and I can share my screen. Hold on.
I don't have this one set up on our end very well.
No, it wouldn't have worked. Each data set is meant for a specific menu board, so I'm going to give me a moment on the menu with multiple points. Harvey, can you think of one off the top of your head?
Multiple price points in any client?
Yeah, in Computrition clients. Has everyone seen my thing?
It's getting there.
Yes, it's black right there. It is.
This is UCLA's coffee menu. As you can see, they have a pretty dense menu for a coffee menu. They want it to.
This is the densest menu we've ever designed, I think.
For coffee, for sure. And this is still done with the exact same format codes as what you saw. What they do is in the enticing description field where we put things like the H1 and the column headers, they can put prices for each of the sizes in there. So they'll have something that looks like $$336, $414, $441 for that caramel macchiato. That allows us to display it correctly. And then we wanted to do the different calories for each size. We also put that in the format field. So the more complex a menu, the more they will need to use the format field, the enticing description, and it ends up displaying correctly. And there's another option for, I think UCLA in particular, when they have a fridge with multiple sizes, I think they're only forecasting a single item. So there's one caramel macchiato, and then they put all different prices and nutrients in the enticing description field. But there are other options. So if they, for example, had a caramel macchiato for each size in Computrition, what we could do is we could say, okay, we'll look for everything that's named caramel macchiato, and we'll condense it into one row. We'll only say it one time, but we'll take the smallest price and in the tall column, the middle price in the middle column, the highest price in the venti column. So there's things that would go automatically or not, depending on how it goes. That all happens in the design phase. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Good.
Quick question. Is it okay with you guys if I share the Carl display rules with the whole team?
It's okay.
Yes, that's fine. We never have any. There's no patient information. There's no proprietary information. It's just whatever they're serving. Yeah. And we don't even have access to. You know that. That's why the gateway was created, so that it's a middleman, so we can never have access to anything important. This is another pretty complicated menu. Maybe this one. Hold on. Let me show you an example of another complicated menu. Another thing I'd like you to see, this is our content management system. You'll see a bunch of other sections like slideshow, text area. These represent parts of the menu that have nothing to do with Computrition, and this allows them to control the slides that show up in the upper right corner, and things like the hours of operation, like Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 30 p.m. That doesn't come from Computrition. That's controlled directly in our CMS. And what's interesting about this menu,
there you go.
Yeah. What's interesting about this menu is that it doesn't follow just a standard left half and right half. All the sections are very different sizes and have totally different layouts. Again, this is all controlled with the same format codes. It's just a matter of the context in which they're used. So this particular menu might be pulling in multiple menus from Computrition. So deli section on the left would be one menu, and then they might have another one for the combo area here. And then bread mixes, extras, made to order, that might be another Computrition menu. So we can actually pull in multiple menus into a single display board. The reason that becomes necessary is usually whenever they change the format drastically within a single layout, meaning this left side has no prices, this section here has a combo price and a regular item price, and then the bread choices have even another different layout. So sometimes that necessitates pulling in multiple menus into a single display.
That's pretty cool.
Did you take control again? Actually, no, it's not yet. One more thing let me show you. In our CMS, let's click on the slideshows. What we have is a slideshow editor. And it lets them import slides from their own hard drive, put them in this little bucket or library at the bottom, and then they can just drag them from bottom to the top, and that determines what their slideshow does.
Nice.
Most of the clients' marketing departments handle their slideshows, and like at UCLA, they have a really very, very involved marketing department, and I've been in there, and let's say I was there during the middle of the hurricane season, and they were right on top of it. They had slides how people can get involved. So they really are they're very involved in that. It's a pretty simple process to add and change your slideshows, as you can see.
We certainly appreciate the demo. It's a lot of information, and it surely is insightful. So thank you guys for doing this for us.
Thank you very much for having us.
My pleasure.